Okay, thank you very much. I mean, your introduction. And welcome everyone to this conversation, we call it. It is actually a laid-back kind of discussion, nothing formal, no PowerPoint, just talking. And we are fortunate today to have with us two very prominent figures.
You're muted, Dato. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me? We have Distinguished Professor Dr. Phang, Deputy Vice Chancellor of our UCSI University. By the way, UCSI University is now the top private university in Malaysia. And we have Dr. Hoshino, who is from Japan, but he has spent many years working in the US, in the universities and postdoctorate. Now he's looking after a big algae plant in Sarawak, Kuching, Sarawak, working together with the Sarawak Biodiversity Center and the Sarawak Energy Berhad. This is indeed a very good occasion for us to discuss. It's very important. Biomass, algae, countries have expressed interest to grow this biomass for their bio-based economy. And many studies have shown that algae biomass actually has very good potential as part of the emerging blue economy. Knowledge gaps which exist in production, in technology. So this is for us to go and do a lot of research and technology development. So this conversation is all wanting to know what is the position of algae in the global economy, in Malaysian economy, in the regional economy. Are we actually capitalizing on this new opportunity? And as you know, algae, you have the macroalgae, which is mainly the seaweed, and we have microalgae. And studies have shown this can lead to interesting products, not only for food, but people are also looking now at the possibility of generating biofuel from algae. So it's going to be a very exciting way of spirulina, which is already very much commercialized, with somebody called the complete food. So algae of opportunities, but apparently seaweeds are mainly harvested in the wild, whereas the microalgae, there is a lot of development of photobioreactor and other land-based production system. So now the EU, for example, is giving a lot of emphasis on building the algae as part of the blue economy as we transition into the SDGs. As you know, everyone is committed to environmental sustainability for the world. And in Malaysia, we have biomass as one of the key elements of our 12 Malaysia plan. So today I'll be posing some questions to our distinguished panelists. And I would encourage participants to also raise questions to the panelists, and even the panelists can raise questions. Conversation, as I mentioned. Okay, maybe to start with, if you can ask panelists this question on, it's quite obvious that algae present a massive opportunity for the world. Can you, for example, share with us what are the gaps that remains that we need to unlock? Maybe Professor Phang can start.
Yes. I think I would like to focus on the seaweeds for a start. And
right.
The microalgae to Dr. Hoshino.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the seaweed industry, I think if you look at the production in the world, actually the seaweeds, contribute, I think, about 30% of all aquaculture production. So, seaweed biomass is a very important biomass. And of course, the use of seaweed to, many years, where it was originally used even as food and medicine. But the current seaweed industry is actually based on colloids, the phycocolloids, namely carrageenan acid. So as you said, yeah, many of the temperate seaweeds, I think especially in Europe, are actually collected from the wild. But in Asia, we actually have, commercial cultivation. So there are lots of the technologies there for cultivation, right? But Malaysia, we were in fact the first to start seaweed farming in this part of the world. But now, Indonesia, even Vietnam and so on, has actually overtaken us. So why? What actually are the issues? Yeah, I think as far as in Malaysia is concerned, there has been a really decline in seaweed production, and basically, yeah, there's very low number of seaweed farms. So the number of time, yeah, and it's not just due to impact of climate change or pollution, but basically I think it's poor incentives. These seaweed farmers, most of them actually small scale farmers, so very poor incentives. There's poor connectivity between the farmers and the industries, and there's a lack of opportunities for the farmers to actually engage in a more profitable business of processing and selling more high-value downstream products. So what Malaysia and many countries in this part of the world, what they do is export the raw biomass, and then we buy back high-value downstream products at a much elevated price. So, and big national, multinational seaweed products companies in Malaysia, in this part of the world. So, and I think very important is also the lack of downstream seaweed products. So we really need to develop a niche for high value seaweed products in Malaysia. So as I said, the technology is already well established, both for cultivation and for extraction of products. Yeah, mainly I'm talking about colloids. But again, seaweeds also nutraceuticals. Again, what we really need is to have a big national or multinational, industry established before we can capitalize on these seaweeds. Yeah.
So what you're saying is we are exporting raw seaweed, is it?
Yes, and buying back seaweed products.
So this is exported mainly to Japan?
Europe, like France, Denmark, US, and Japan.
Because what we know about seaweed is we have been having sushi and all this, all from Japan.
It's a different kind of seaweed.
Oh, I see.
Seaweeds are very different from Japanese seaweeds. Temperate seaweeds are mainly used as food, except for the brown seaweeds. They are sourced of alginic acid. But tropical seaweeds, I think the most valuable is carrageenan, especially carrageenan. And in Malaysia, where we have quite a thriving, cultivation, copper which is the source of copper carrageenan. But again, there has been a great decline over the last few years. Yeah.
Very interesting. What about Dr. Hoshino? Can you tell us a bit about microalgae? Because yes.
I think I'm going to talk about microalgae. It's very similar to the macroalgae to some aspects. Well, first of all, we believe there are mainly two big challenges that we have to overcome, and we have to overcome and to unlock the potential of the industrial use of microalgae. The first thing is production. Though we have, since maybe the beginning of 19th century, we recognize the microalgae and also recognize the potential of microalgae. And so that, especially during World War II time, 1940 to 1950, there are a lot of intensive researches on microalgae, and people believe that's one of the very good source of food and fuel and so on. However, so far, as of today, the production of microalgal biomass in the world is limited to around 20 to 30,000 tons. So, well, compared to, let's say, like a wheat, soybeans, rice, so on, it's tiny amount. So the production or the secure supply of the feedstock or production is very limited, and that's something we have to solve. And the other big challenge that we believe is that the lack of applications. So when you think about the applications using microalgal biomass or components from microalgae biomass, is maybe you can think of some nutraceutical tablet or maybe cosmetics, maybe, but that's it. So we don't really have diversity in commercial using microalgae. So basically for the producers of microalgae biomass, if there is not many like applications and opportunity to make the sales, then why do we have to invest for the mass production systems and so on? And for the application developers, if there is not enough or sufficient supply of feedstocks, why do we have to think of developing a new products? And that two components are influencing each other. And so I think we basically have to solve those two challenges like at the same time, concomitantly. No one, either one can just go first and second. Or it has to be simultaneous.
So that means you are saying that supply is still a problem.
Supply is a very problem.
What about in Japan? Do you have a robust policy to grow this kind of industry?
No, not really, because well, in Japan, for example, we have been having commercial production since 1960s. However, it's like a really tiny business there, and most of the algal product that we are using, even in Japan, is also the feedstock of the biomass is imported from outside of Japan, from the United States, from Myanmar, and so on. So
which country is the best exporter of this biomass in the world?
Oh, that's...
Is it Europe?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the US or Thailand.
US?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
If I may...
yes, Prof. Phang, yes.
Yes. Actually, the micro algae industry basically, is focused on health products. Nutraceutical, spirulina, chlorella, dunadella, and one of the biggest producer of spirulina is the Nippon Ink and Chemicals. They have plants in California. They had one in Bangkok, but it's closed down. They moved to Hainan Island. Yeah.
Yes.
So, to me, sorry if there aren't any algae farmers around, but I think the DIC spirulina is the best in quality. Yeah, to me lah. It started as health food, but now a lot of focus is actually on using the microalgae biomass as a feedstock for biofuel, right? So, but again, as Dr. Hoshino said, we have to broaden the diversity of products that we can, and not just to focus on one. If you focus on one product, you may, you need to have products that you can immediately use, products for the midterm. So this is how, if you really, want to develop this micro algal industry.
So I believe the government has a strong role to play, isn't it? To push this industry.
Even in Malaysia, seaweed, microalgae, we did have some things like algae tech produce dunadella as health. again, many of these microalgal used as health food, they are categorized under herbal medicine. So less stringent, requirements, so and less stringent quality control. Simply, the controls would be the buyer. They will then demand certain criteria to be met from our civic biomass. So other than that, we actually Malaysia has no policy. So I think in this algal industry, really, the products, technology is almost there already. There's great potential. So what we should do is actually we have to develop our own governance, policies, regulations. Yeah, that would also provide for fiscal and non-fiscal financial assistance to the industry, especially the smallholders. Yeah.
So is a government doing it? I mean, it is in the 12 Malaysia plan, but is there some initiatives?
Yes, there are a lot of governments from different countries are trying to do. However, again, the problem is the scale of the industry or the business we have at this moment. So if the business is so tiny and if government consider it not worth for nicely taking care of in terms of policy and so on, of course, those policy development of organization is going to be really delayed. So what we have to do first is establish a large enough industry so that ignore this industry anymore, so that they are going to organize the policies and so on. So, but to promote that, of course, we have to make an effort to make the productions and application development and so on, make the industries bigger. At the same time, as Dr. Phang advised and commented, we have to start organizing our own regulations and rules. And that's going to be the world standard in the next generations, I think.
Yeah, I've got some comments from the audience here. Dr. Ramalingam, he says that India is a major contributor of the spirulina business.
Yes,
here, about 100 metric ton per month dry mass. There is also a question here from Dr. Ahmad Riza Ghazali. There are many microalgae workers, such as in ExxonMobil, they spend US 10 billion. Shell, ENI, Sarawak Biodiversity Center, and others trying to get crude algae oil from algae biomass. Unfortunately, we have not seen any that has been reported. He wants the panelists to comment on this. Despite the huge investment that has been put in, what can be learned from this? Is the return from biomass not so attractive?
Well, so can I just comment on that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
It is very difficult to define what is successful, what is not successful. And well, based on these huge funding opportunities and so on in the past, actually the technology itself is developing and still developing. And also the industry and small businesses are actually blooming up. So I don't really consider this as an entirely failure. There are certain outcomes out of that. And further than that, regarding that, still the success is not enough, I would say. So that's why we don't have the big industries of microalgae yet. But the biggest reason in that, I think, well, especially a lot of activities and things happen in the US is, as also Dr. Phang commented before, when they are just focusing on one product, in the case of the US, they are just focusing on the aviation fuel.
Yeah.
It is really difficult to make it economically sustainable or feasible. So as she also mentioned, the most important thing is that we have to develop diverse applications so that entire biomass is going to be used. And that's something we have been actually discussing for a long time, and we are trying to do it right now. So eventually the situation is going to be changed, and all these failure that you consider at this moment will be the seed of the success in the future.
That, yeah, Prof. Phang, you want to say something?
Sorry.
Please?
Yes. I would like to add on to that as well. Now, actually, of the reasons is also the economics. So, as Dr. Hoshino rightly, don't focus on one. You must have several, products. Now, this is the most expensive part. It's actually your cultivation system, the and the processing. Now, the cultivation system, what is expensive? Of course, the capital cost of setting up your bioreactors. If you're using enclosed systems or open systems, your heavy ponds, your raceway ponds, but substrates, the nutrients that you use is expensive. So there's a big move actually to use agro-industrial waste, to use waste, to replace the expensive nutrients. So in that way, you can actually reduce the cost. But again, because it is waste grown, there are lots of regulations regarding the use of waste grown. Look up, documents from the European Algae Biomass Association. There's quite a nice document, that describes, all the risks and what regulations ought to be, in place before you can use this, industrial waste. Like Chitose. Chitose is actually using flue gas. So that is, I think, a very good initiative. Maybe Dr. Hoshino would like to say something on that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Hoshino, you're using flue gas. So
yes, at this moment we are trying to use the flue gas from the power plant generations, and also, as Dr. Phang mentioned, use of other waste is considered maybe for the water and nutrient for the microalgae. We can possibly use like a secondary or tertiary, like a treated water from the water treatment facility and so on. Those kind of integration is going to have a big impact in the future, and that's something also, we really have to work on together.
Yeah. And I
think
so
in your plant in Sarawak, you are actually pumping in the carbon emission, right?
That's something we are, it's still under construction, but that's something we are planning to.
Yeah, but the emission will not have enough nutrients there, phosphate, nitrates.
So the CO2 is actually tapped from the flue gas. But other nutrient at this moment, we are using agricultural grade fertilizers. So in the future, but again, as I just said, if we can integrate like a wastewater treatment facility and so on to supply the portion or entire nutrient that microalgae is going to need, that's going to increase the efficiency and also sustain ecological and environmental sustainability.
Yeah, that also improve the economics, isn't it? Because one of the costs is nutrients.
Right.
And now with this Ukraine war, this hike in the fertilizer price, this is going to be an issue. And I was talking to, the rare earth plant, Linus. One of the ways is very rich in phosphate. This has been tested by UPM. But of course, they are concerned about the level of radioactivity, which actually is minimal, but because people are not used to it. So do you think that there is need for research to look at using all this waste? There is need for more research, because ultimately, if the economics of production is not positive, then you will not encourage investors to go in. So I see that cost is the nutrient. Prof. Phang, you say something?
Yes. As I said, there's a very nice document from the European Algae Biomass Association regarding waste-grown algae. And So they have actually specified that there should be regulations, we should that area, how you produce waste-grown algae. I mean, we use it for biofuel, biofertilizer. It's very, but when we talk about using waste, the best waste to use would be agro-industrial waste, right? Palm effluent is non-toxic. Yeah. But it's so difficult to use palm oil effluent. Our lab, we've actually, grown algae in palm oil effluent with great dilution, yeah, and so on and so forth. But yes, I think using waste is a good strategy. Yeah, and of course, yeah, using carbon dioxide from refineries and things like that is very good, because the attraction of an algal industry is that it sequesters carbon dioxide. Yeah, that is why algae biomass, algae cultivation is very, very important and has great potential. Yeah, because it addresses climate change. Yeah.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the productivity of the biomass is very high if you look at per unit land area or per unit area of growth compared to other plants. So it is encouraging for the country or for the world to capitalize on this as part of the carbon sequestration that we need. But I'm still wondering why the support from government pushing this as an international trade and international business is still not very strong. Like Malaysia, for example, what are we doing to try and prop up this kind of business? Because we are running short, like palm oil, we're already running short of land to grow oil palm, right? We already reached 6 million hectares, no more land because of this deforestation issue. So the only way is to go to the sea. And of course, to use aquaculture, like to grow algae. So I'm still wondering why from the government, from the country, push this kind of industry.
Yeah, well, that's, I guess, as I answered before, compared to, let's say, 600 million, 6 acres of palm plantation in the industry in Malaysia.
Yes.
It's a giant industry in Malaysia. Compared to that, and maybe also macroalgae industry is tiny, like a small industry. So for the government and for a lot of people, I think it's not worth for considering yet. So to make it happen, I think what we have to do is just to make the successful case or showcase or successful example here, so that they are not going to be ignoring it anymore.
Yes.
So,
yes. I think, Dr. Hoshino has brought up a very good point. Now, if you look at Malaysia, we have had several algae companies, right? But they have not been able to actually produce the kind of productivity that they promised. So one, I don't want to name it, had a huge grant from the government, but nothing resulted from that. And then one more companies, just couldn't do it. So the thing is, if you want to gain the confidence of the government and the industries in Malaysia, right? You need to come up with evidence-based, how do you say, communications lah. You must have evidence. You don't have the real evidence to tell them, yes, this can work. We can do it. So I think what Chitose is doing in Sarawak, and it's really a very good initiative, yeah, because I know Dr. Hoshino well, yeah, and I believe that they have actually gone through the whole process. They first worked with Sarawak Biodiversity Center. They isolated local species. They identified which one they want to use, and now they managed to get funds from Japan to set up a real big, large-scale demonstration site. And I just, this morning I was looking for, information, and I read about, Honda and Ineos getting interested. So with these big players, and I think Chitose would be the one, to actually show Malaysia in the region that it can be done. Yeah.
I see some questions from the audience. Mr. Osman is asking, what is the feasibility of using microalgae for biofuel? There seems to be a lot of interest in converting the lipids in algae to biofuel. And the other question that he has posed is the potential of microalgae for pharmaceutical is very high, but it seems that for biofuel may not be as attractive. Do you have, Dr. Hoshino?
Yes. So, well, let me just go one by one.
Yeah.
The feasibility of using microalgae for biofuel. Yes. I mean, technically speaking, yes, it is feasible. And the third question,
when you say feasible, is it economically feasible or technically feasible?
Technically feasible.
Technically, but economic is still a big question.
Economic
right?
is different. Yeah. So, as repeatedly said in this conversation as well, I mean, if we are just focusing on biofuel itself, it's going to be really difficult to make it economically feasible. So we have to use entire biomass efficiently so that it's like a soybeans. When we harvest soybeans, we are going to separate soy meal and soy oil.
Yeah.
Both of materials are going to be industrially and widely used.
Yes.
So soy oil or soy meal itself cannot make it economically feasible. But if both of those materials and the entire biomass is efficiently used, it can be economically feasible. I think it's the same. So we cannot just extract oil from algae biomass and use it for the fuels or other material and just toss the other rest of the biomass. We have to use the entire biomass. I think it's same for the macroalgae as well. The thing that I would like to comment on the second question is that right now people are just focusing on the fuel production mostly, but microalgae biomass can produce both food and fuel at the same time. I mean, the production of oil, the leftover biomass is basically protein and carbohydrate-rich part, so that can be used for the food. So it's not like a fuel or energy and food competition there. We can actually solve both questions at the same time. And also the last one, the pharmaceutical is very high in terms of economic feasibility. Yes, of course. We were also thinking in the same way. Let's say we produce high-value chemicals using a certain microalgal strains, so that even if in a small scale, so the production cost is very high, it's still commercially feasible. So we were thinking like we can actually start with high-value chemicals or high-value output first and gradually increase our production capacity. And eventually when the production cost gets cheap enough, we can get into the commodity products. But that doesn't work because if you start with the high-value chemicals or high-value products, you are making a lot of profit margin. So the product and the harvesting systems and value chains are adjusted to make the profit with that high-value product. So that supply chain and everything is not going to work for the commodity, like a really low-price products. So we have to design the entire usage of the biomass from the beginning and for the diverse applications. And we have to develop entirely, slowly.
Yeah, I can see that you have to go for higher value products because the cost to produce microalgae is also very high, right?
If I may add.
Yeah, please.
Another strategy, because for your November conference, you're going to focus on 3 types of biomass, right? Now, if you want to produce biofuel, okay, this is a question I'm posing to everybody. Yeah. Do you think that, some technologies allow to use different sources of biomass to produce the biofuel? So, like microalgae, after you extract the valuable products, lipids, proteins and things like that, bioactive compounds, you're left with the 60-70% of cellulosic material that could be used, for digestion also, to produce other forms of energy. You combine it with, biomass from palm oil industry, rubber industry, from the rice fields, so different types of, even waste wood construction materials that can use using different technologies to produce is, and things like that. So, that's one strategy, right? Want to ask what people think about that. Now,
so
one pharmaceuticals, just very quickly. If you're using algae, whether it's microalgae or seaweed, as a feedstock for biopharmaceutical, it's going to be very expensive. It's a very long, tedious process to get approvals. But as I said, you're using it as a source of nutraceutical. It's easier.
That's why I say, I mean, because the cost of production is still very high, you have to target the high value products, mainly the nutraceutical sector and all that. But which country in the world is the biggest or the most active in this industry? Which country? I've read somewhere that Europe is also very serious about this. But over other countries, are they really pushing this as one of their source of economic revenue? Dr. Hoshino?
So
Hello?
in terms of microalgae things, or
microalgae or seaweed, which country is actually, the market is already quite mature. There is a lot of production, there's a lot of trading, a lot of downstream. Which country?
France really produced a lot of cosmeceuticals. In fact, some of the big cosmetic brands like Lancome and things like that, they actually have microalgae product inside, seaweed products. And, they have a lot of spas where they actually already traditionally use seaweeds, as apps for treatment of for healing purposes. I don't know, Japan, I think also, right?
Yes, it is very popular too. However, the application is only limited to the high value chemicals in the products. So, to be honest, I don't really know which country is the most active in terms of that at this moment. But within 5 years, I would like to make Malaysia to be the first most active place. That's why we are working together with the people here.
Why is Malaysia having that prospect?
Because first of all, this location is like a perfect for the primary production utilizing the photosynthesis system. And also this location doesn't have any big natural disasters like Japan. We have earthquakes and typhoons and four seasons and snows and everything, but it's really nice and really stable in Malaysia. So the production for, for making the first successful case of microalgae industry, I think this Malaysia is one of the best locations in the world. That's why we are actually doing it here.
What about China? There's been a comment here that China is one of the largest producer of microalgae.
Yes, true. However, most of their production is happening far north or in the South Island. And
Hainan, the Hainan Island.
Hainan Island.
Yeah.
And however, I think the biggest portion is actually from the north part. And that location, I don't think it can do efficient production of biomass. Well, it's basically very cold in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know. So far, maybe they are actually having really commercial success. But I think in the future for sustainable development and CO2 reduction and so on, I don't think that's the good location for that.
So what you're saying is the potential for the region, Malaysia, Indonesia, looks more attractive in trying to be a leading producer of this algae and seaweed.
Yeah, basically solar radiation and freshwater resources and also stable temperatures and enough land and so on. Yeah, I think this location is very good. And commercially speaking also, it is close to the big market like Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, Taiwan, China, Japan, Australia, and so on. So in terms of commercial activities, I think this location is really good.
Yeah, so that's why Prof. Phang will know the Academy Science is pushing hard for the blueprint on blue economy for Malaysia. So I hope that in the main forum, the forum that we have in November, there'll be more discussion towards this end. Maybe we get some people from government, the EPU, maybe to comment on this. Because I also see that the potential is there, but the structure of the market and the industry and the logistics will have to be worked on. And the only people or the only sector which can push this is the government. Because once you have the right volume of business, then the private sector will come in. Yes? Yeah, Prof. Phang, what about research? What do you think? Are we getting enough money for research?
No. Actually, now money for research, there is money for research, but as you know, many of the grants do not allow you to buy equipment. So they just, you know, I mean, there's insufficient fund to support large equipment. So that's why industry academia partnership is very important. Yeah, because the investment, you know, in equipment and facilities has to come from the industry. If not, it's really very difficult for the universities, to proceed. There is a question, Dato. Amanda, can you,
Yeah, you can read out what is question.
It says, given the huge potential of algae biomass production due to satisfactory technology, does the technology address the disadvantages of algae production, such as high use of fertilizer? Inconsistencies in quality due to refinement processes. Now, I will answer the first part. Maybe Dr. Hoshino can answer the quality part.
Please.
Yes. In fact, you know, when you want to develop an algal farm, be it microalgae or seaweed farm, it's very important to look at the impact of the environment. You have to look at the carbon footprint, water footprint, nutrient footprints. But if you look at many of these, you know, large-scale cultivation systems like microalgae, they actually recycle the water, right? Because there's still a lot of unused nutrients, so they recycle and they reuse. So no, you know, they don't actually discharge. So even though they use fertilizers, they are not going to pollute the environment. It's good. It's a closed, almost a closed system. So of course we talk about water. Of course now there's a move to go to marine species. If you use marine species, there's lots of seawater, but the farm has to be next to the sea. You can't you know, channel into seawater to very far inland. So there are many yes, there are still of course issues that need to be you know, looked at and optimized. So Dr. Hoshino,
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. And well, in terms of fertilizer use, basically microalgae is part of the production of biomass compared to the other crops. It's, I think, a lot smaller. So that's not really a big issue. But as Dr. Phang mentioned, the technical difficulties that we are facing right now is, well, I don't know, this is just my idea, but the society and our community is now developed based on basically rules. So the city itself and life itself is all designed to fit that circumstance. But again, if we are going to develop a new society or new world, new life based on these sustainable biomass productions, everything has to be redesigned to fit to that. So for example, to maybe macroalgae farm or microalgae farm has to be located close to the water. It can be marine water or like fresh water. And it has to be located close to the CO2 source, or the supply chains or logistics has to be developed based on that. Maybe the processing or fabrication facility sitting next to that. All those kind of things have to be redesigned. And that's something I am actually having some trouble right now. And because for the mass production of microalgae, we need to have like basically big land, but that has to be located close to the point source of CO2 and has to be convenient enough to have the efficient logistics and so on and so on. So, but it's not necessarily, how to say, the situation is not really favoring our new systems, but based on the fossil fuel things. So that's something we have to also organize to make our situation or industry development to be smooth. Maybe I think I'm not answering.
Yeah, I think maybe we can learn something from how we developed the palm oil industry in Malaysia. You know, about many years ago, palm oil was very small in the world. Palm oil was mainly coming from Nigeria, very small amount. Malaysia went in initially, not much palm oil. But Malaysia started to create this industry-funded research center, which looked at technology, which looked at market, which looked at promotion of the oil all over the world, moving the industry. Maybe we should think about getting the government to establish this kind of industry involved, industry funded together with government, a research dedicated to this algae and seaweed biomass or the blue economy. This is something we need to think about, I think, because unless we have a mover, then the development will be very uncertain. And the commitment from industry, because they do not see as a very good investment, it will not move well. So what do you think?
Yes.
Prof. Phang and
yes, Dato, I think you brought up a very good point.
Yeah.
In fact, yes, there should be a sort of a national coordinated research body, right?
Yeah.
Research center that will focus on these issues. How are we going to push and drive our, algae industry? And I remember reading in the news that Petronas is really going big into green, sustainable, energy production.
Yes.
Petronas over here, and Petronas maybe, could become the champion because
why not? Yes.
Then few, if they are, willing to maybe a lead an initiative like this, get a group of academics and industries together, and then we, get some funds, international funds, industry funds, to, you know, to actually focus on certain issues that is going to, you know, drive the algae industry forward.
Yeah, maybe our Tan Sri Omar Center can start some discussion on this.
And in addition to that, I would like to add some comments.
Please.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, people or government or funding body has to recognize that the scaling of the research is going to be also another big factor. So let's say, even if we develop the new technologies in a lab scale or maybe in some small pilot scale, and a lot of people sometimes consider that's the completion of development of technologies. But actually, to make it industrially feasible or to scale it up, it's another big technology development required there. But often that part is not considered as like a research development, but just considered as commercial activities, so that the funding is not going to be granted for that kind of project. But for Dr. Phang's, of course, macroalgae production systems and microalgae production systems, the production system itself is going to cost more than a couple million USDs. And also for integration of processing and logistics and so on, development of all those kind of stuff requires a lot of researches and also a lot of cost. So that has to be at the same time to be funded. And because it's not really a science, but it's more like engineering or industrial engineering. However, to make it commercially happens, that's most important part. And a lot of macroalgae and microalgae technology is ready for actually scaling up already. So as Dr. Phang mentioned, if there is somebody who's going to invest on that, like a big scale demonstration and so on, that person or that funding body can be the champion of this entire future industries and so on. They have to realize this potential.
Yes. And of course, there is a comment from Dr. Ahmad Rizal, which I agree. In any industry, we need to have the standards and the quality. They need to be properly defined to actually promote the trade, the buying and selling of products. So this is another thing which can be handled by the center that I was talking about. So it looks like there are a lot of opportunities which remain untapped at the moment. We need a lot of push by the authorities in terms of policy, in terms of research, in terms of attracting investment into this industry. So I believe that more will be covered in our forum in November, where we'll get more speakers to actually contribute ideas, basically how to move this industry to be another economic force, not only for Malaysia, for the region, for the world. Because I think as we move into this sustainability era, we have no choice, but we have to go for bio-based industry. And what about hydrogen? Can certain algae species produce hydrogen?
Yes,
or genetic?
Yes.
So these are things that we need to look at. And I'm sure Petronas also is very keen now to move into hydrogen. So there's a lot of discussion that can happen. And maybe if I can invite somebody from Petronas to offer a paper for our World Biomass Forum in November, then we can have a more engrossed discussion on this topic. Well, since we are coming to the end of this conversation, I think I have enjoyed the inputs from both Prof. Phang and also Dr. Hoshino, and from the participant. It has all been very productive, very encouraging, new ideas. We need to work on this. And I hope that the forum in November will throw more ideas how we can actually create a new blue ocean, blue economy industry for Malaysia and the region. So with those, thank you once again to everyone, to Prof. Phang and to Dr. Hoshino. And now I'll pass back to the NC. Amin, please, Amin.
Right, thank you so much, Dato. And thank you so much to Dr. Takanori Hoshino and Professor Phang for joining us today to deliver such a fruitful session as we gain so many knowledge on the ongoing issues and infos of algae biomass in the world as well as in Malaysia. All right, so this marks the end of our session for today, and we would like to invite everyone, all of the presentees today, to participate in our World Biomass Forum 2022, which will be held on 22nd until 24th November 2022. And this info about this event on our website, www.worldbiomassforum.com. It will be held from 22nd to 24th November. This event will be done via Zoom meeting platform to allow everyone. We would like to have everyone around the world to participate in this event with such convenience. So we hope to see everyone in our next Prelude Expert Insight series, which will be focusing on two other energy sources, which are municipal solid waste biomass, and also the other one is oil palm biomass. And until then, thank you for coming, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. See you.
All right.
Bye.